Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz, Mourad, and today I'm joined by Alex Bonilla.
Hello.
In what I can only say is a preview of the Gnome Apocalypse, today we'll be discussing Early Man, a stop-motion comedy directed by Nick Park, most famously known for creating Shaun the Sheep and Wallace and Gromit. Although it was released a couple weeks ago in the UK, it just came out here in the US this past weekend. Let's take a moment of silence for its box office, because everybody went to see Black Panther instead.
Hashtag counter-programming.
Hashtag didn't work, because my theater was pretty empty.
Same. I only had like 7 people in there.
Yeah, mine fared a little bit better, but even then my theater was very small. So... counter programming. Does it work? Does it not work? Why doesn't it work sometimes and why does it work other times? That's a discussion for another podcast, but worth discussing. So yeah, you can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, where we appreciate your star ratings, or search for Overly Animated on your favorite podcatcher. So, the way these podcasts go, we start out with a brief non-spoiler discussion before getting into spoilers. I will warn you guys, if you haven't seen this movie and you don't want to be spoiled, don't worry, I'll tell you once it's time to turn our lovely voices off. But yeah, beside that, let's just start out with Alex. Are you familiar with Nick Park's work?
Yes. As a child, I watched Chicken Run maybe 20 times. Like, it was one of my favorite movies as a young kid. I guess like that kind of quirky British humor just appealed to me somehow, and that later affected other weird favorite movies I have, like Rango, for example. And then later on, like Shaun the Sheep movie I caught a couple of months ago. It's a very charming film. And I actually just watched The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which I believe was Oscar nominated. And that one is also pretty good, too, I think, on Chicken Run's level. So, all in all, I think that Aardman Productions and Nick Park is capable of good work.
Gotcha. First tell people what Chicken Run is, because when you were talking about it on Discord, I just thought you were talking about Chicken Little, and I was like, wait, why? What does Chicken Little have to do with this?
No, Chicken Run is the story of a coop of British chickens who are governed by a tyrannical chicken farmer. And this American rooster, voiced by Mel Gibson, I know, problematic, but American rooster comes in and is like, hey, I can fly. I'll teach you guys how to fly to get out of here. And it turns out,
I think I have heard of this movie before.
Yeah, and yes. It's a very charming film. Like it's by the numbers, admittedly, something we'll mention later on in this podcast. But I think it does enough with like its jokes and with the characters, like making the characters interesting, especially Ginger, the main character. So I think that's what makes that movie just very entertaining to watch. And even the villains as well, like the humans have their own little quirks and small jokes, but like not over the top at all. So in that sense, Chicken Run is just a very good film. And I definitely recommend that and Curse of the Were-Rabbit to people for sure.
Gotcha. And one final follow-up is, what's it called? Rango? Is that? I thought that was American produced. I didn't know that was like UK humor.
No. Well, I mean, like, it's in that vein of like quirky humor. Like, it's not your standard children's film. Like, it does have some adult jokes thrown in, but but also it's not like in your face, like say Shrek or Madagascar adult humor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. All right, cool. That's good, because I'm familiar, like, visually with Nick Park's work. Like, I know what Shaun the Sheep is. I've just never seen it. But, like, if you show me a picture of his stuff and his style, I'm like, oh, yes, I know what this is. I just have never seen it, but I can put name to, like, I knew what it was. So it's good to have you on then, because I've never seen any of his work. I've never been really interested in a lot of his stuff. Maybe like, just visually, it's not that striking.
Yeah, I was going to ask, in that case, what's your opinion just on claymation in general? Because I feel like that's a very specific thing to these kind of movies.
I don't mind it, and I love stop motion, and I do not mind the animation. It's only, I think it's more just the artistic style of these characters in a weird way. Like, I just don't find them to be visually striking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that claymation is the problem. That's more just their art style, their character design, you know. So that's more my take. It's like the animation's not the problem, and if anything, it's like a lot of times it's so nice and refreshing to see. It's just those designs, they don't do anything for me, really.
Yeah, because like to me, especially when you watch the older claymation films, where it's almost they don't add as much CGI as they have in their more recent films like Shaun the Sheep or Early Man. But like when you go back to the older films and it's almost purely claymation, it's just interesting to see how the characters move. Like that alone like catches my eye, because it's just different from what you're used to in so many other animated movies. So it's just a nice treat whenever something like that comes across, for me anyway.
Totally. I just wish they had like used the clay to make them prettier. That's just me. I'm superficial that way. But
the chickens in Chicken Run are very pretty.
Okay, well, again, I haven't seen. I vaguely remember Chicken Run, and usually animals aren't the problem. It's more like, for me, it's more the people. Like the people designs are more like they just don't work for me.
Yeah, the humans you're seeing in Early Man, it's pretty much been the same design for all of these movies. So like, if that's your hang up, then that's not going to get solved.
Yeah, I figured. But yeah, so let's get into Early Man. Did you like this movie? Remember, non-spoilers. We're still in non-spoilers.
Yeah, I'm gonna like. I can't call it bad because we did a podcast on The Boss Baby, and like that's level of bad.
No. I mean, this is bad. Okay, it could be like bad. It could be like not as bad, but it could still be bad.
Yeah, that's why I want to say like The Boss Baby is like bafflingly bad, and this is just disappointingly bad, because I guess considering their work, I expected to be laughing a lot more. But I don't know, the jokes in this one felt very weak. I think the premise is very straightforward. It's your classic sports underdog story, so it hits every single beat you expect any other movie of this.
Does it hit every single beat, though? Does it really?
Almost every single beat that a sports movie does, and it's just too expected. The characters, they just don't have any depth to them. A lot of them are one-note characters, so that runs its course very quickly. And just the idea of, hey, a caveman movie. Okay, cool. I'm ready for prehistoric jokes. And you don't use it at all, really. Like admittedly, the visual gags are pretty good in this movie in some parts, and I think that's always been Aardman's strengths, like using the visual humor. Dialogue has never been their strong suit, but I think they've been better in previous movies. Here, it's just too straight. It's not. It doesn't land a lot of the humor that they're aiming for in this movie.
Gotcha. And I mean, but what did you think about the cast then? I mean, because I remember when the end credits were happening, that was like, I was surprised by the caliber of people working on this movie. I felt bad for them. I'm like, your talents, you're being wasted.
I guess, although when I see bigger names, like in a lot of animated films, you see the big names. It's like, well, I don't really care, because like they're not voice actors; they're just normal actors.
Well, to be fair, it's not simply like they were just doing their voice. In this one, at least they were doing accents and stuff for whatever the reason it was.
Well, the thing is, they're all British actors, so they're all doing their normal accents. So
no, I mean, like, for instance, Tom Hiddleston does a French one. There are people doing German accents or stuff. So it's not just like their normal voices.
I suppose. I guess I'm just saying this because none of the voices really stood out to me. Like maybe Richard Ayoade, just because I like him, and like, but once his character is also one note, just him saying "Oh, mom" or whatever. Yeah. So like his voice is wasted there, and the other voices are just. I guess Tom Hiddleston is a bit goofy, so that helps the character somewhat. But like Eddie Redmayne, I don't care. Maisie Williams. The character is not strong enough to outweigh her voice being good. None of them are deal breakers, and none of them are elevating the character.
Gotcha. And what about the animation then? Because I mean, you did say that this movie and most recent movies by the studio use a lot more CGI now with their claymation.
Yeah, I want to say that what stood out to me in positive is just the backgrounds, especially in the forest scenes. Mm-hmm. Like those are precious to watch. The intro when you're just like going in, the camera's going in slowly into the groves and all. Like, that's very pretty to watch. But then you get, and the characters themselves move fine, but there's like a ball that's moving all the time in this movie, no matter what. And whenever they do like soccer scenes, like it feels like they inject CGI, and it's a lot more noticeable than I would have liked, especially in the training scenes. It looks too smooth going along with the rest of the movie. To the point where it doesn't even look like clay anymore. It just looks like CGI characters placed in a clay background. So like that part just felt weird to watch.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I hated this movie. I just couldn't stand it. Like, and I'm someone who like really like who follows the Premier League, who's like really into soccer and like the culture and whatever. I couldn't stand this movie. I couldn't stand it because it says nothing. It does nothing. It is so superficial. It has plot holes within its plot holes. It's just so stupid. It is a horrible movie. It is not in the same level as Boss Baby. Well, I mean, no, it is in the same level. It's just, it's in that same level of this is ridiculous. There's no point to this. You're not saying anything. You're just doing this for for a reason I cannot understand. And you have the potential to actually say something, to provide some sort of commentary, and you just don't. It's so empty and so boring and so by the numbers that you're already doing multiplication table stuff and exercises with these numbers because you're so bored of what you're seeing on screen. You're just so tired of, whoa, this movie, I can't. It's so bad.
I'm glad you could muster anger for this. Like, I wish I could, because you are right that it's just very by the numbers. There's nothing deep about this movie at all, nothing to really stimulate your mind. But at the same time, like, I guess I'm thinking, like, I should be liking this movie because of who made it, and I've enjoyed their movies in the past. It's like, why is this one not working? But I had to keep asking myself that question throughout the entire movie because it's very rare where I got a genuine laugh out of it. It was really strange experience going in.
I don't know. I mean, and again, it's not even, this is just British humor that you don't understand. It's like, no, it's just not funny. And the moment, like, it's just so, the butt of the joke, like, the punchline before they even start the joke, and you're just thinking, oh God, like, why are we wasting our time with this? So, and I was very disappointed because again, another reminder that Rotten Tomatoes may not be the greatest measurement of quality. This movie has like an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is like, I consider that a high score. And I would give it a 30. On a good day, I'd give it a 30. So yeah, there's not really much else to say. So let's just get into these spoilers. Everybody just go away if you want to see this movie, but my recommendation is don't see it. It's not worth your time. So yeah, spoiler time. There isn't, Alex, you said that that this is basically an underdog story and stuff, but I mean, there isn't much plot to this. This movie could have been told in like 30 minutes. Without, like, I feel like that's part of the problem. It just was, it's just simply, a tribe gets their land taken away by a kingdom. They challenge the kingdom to a duel, but the kingdom obviously has the experience and the money behind them. And then by the end, they manage to get someone who's really good to teach them how to do whatever duel it is, and then they win at the end. That's it. That's the story. There's nothing else to it. There's no additional things. Do you think that it's because this movie plays it so safe? Because, like, why do you think, one, that they needed to take so long with this movie? Like, why couldn't they just do like an animated short with this? And do you think that's like the main problem with this movie? That because it is such a cliched story, because they didn't add anything additional to it, that's why it feels so empty?
I think it's the latter. That it's just that there's no deviation from the story that you're expecting here. From the very beginning, you can figure, oh, okay, well, these people are going to get their land back. They're going to get good at soccer and overcome the odds. And all you're doing is just watching them do their fake training montages. they add a trainer who has no real motives for joining them in the first place, and they end up doing it. It's because they work together. Hooray! Like it is just a very straightforward plot, and I think part of this just has to do why soccer. Like what if you have a caveman setting, there is various stories you can do here. Why go for something as absurd as a soccer tournament as your entire story? Like I went in knowing that soccer was going to be a part of this movie, that I had already gotten that warning. But I figured, okay, maybe it's a second half thing where that's like the stuff that goes through, but we'll have time to like explore caveman life. And in all, it's like maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the beginning, and that's it.
Yeah.
So like that part just feels like wasted potential. And I think that's also what hurts my opinion of this movie. It's like there is stuff to be funny there, but you just kind of buried it in favor of this story that I'm not interested in at all. And you haven't given me much of a reason to be interested in it because we only saw them in their home for 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and also this film does not justify it being about cavemen. Soccer, football, it started in England. That in itself, that of course, that's where it's going to take place. But last time I checked, elephants didn't exist in England. Neither did volcanoes. And just there's this world that's created for cavemen set in England where this sport started. And it's like, but that's not true. And because by the fact that you're already adding, like, you're just completely ignoring the entire history of this sport. You're completely just like taking actual interesting descriptions and facts and taking them and saying, you know what, we don't need them. We're actually going to do our own thing, and then give us such an unoriginal story. It just makes no sense, and there's no point to them being cavemen. Despite that, and then at the same time, there's this, oh, yes, but we're gonna have a queen, but the lord of the land that works under her is French, but then the people of the actual kingdom sound German, and it's like, wait, what is happening? Like, what are you trying to say? And, you know, it's just really frustrating because it's like, okay, at first I was like, are you gonna like comment on like colonialism and like colonizing and being like an empire trying to take someone's land? Like, is that what you're gonna do? They don't do that. Then I'm thinking, okay, so what you're gonna do is actually provide some commentary over soccer and football and like how England are the people who actually created this sport, yet they are the ones who cannot win a World Cup. That's actually something interesting too. It's like,
I think that's the joke of this movie.
No,
I want to say
totally.
that's like their only, like, their seed they had, and they're like, okay, how do we make a movie around that joke?
But the problem is, it's like, it's not even saying anything. It's not even like giving us the joke. It's like, it's so, like, that's just a reality. They don't even say like, oh, like, if we work together, it's like, whatever. It's like, dude, English players, it's not that they're bad, it's that they choke. That's why. That's what happens with England. It's not that they're bad players or because, oh, we just are not, it's not as if like, oh, it's like, oh, we don't play this sport anymore and that's whatever. It's like, no, it's that they can't play when they need to play. They can't win when like the spotlight is on them. That's the joke. That's what you're supposed to like really explore, and they just don't. And on top of that, it's like, okay, so then are you going to go into the actual club culture? Because here you have this French guy who only cares about money, and he's the quote-unquote owner of this team of
Bronzio?
Real Bronzio, Real Madrid, like, ha ha ha, so funny. So it's like, okay, so this is what you're gonna do. And it's like, no, they don't even really comment at that much on it. It's so silly, and on top of that, they know, look, doesn't matter, like, if you have, supposedly, these real Bronzios or whatever, they're, like, supposedly the best players of soccer in that world, right? Look, if you have the best players, doesn't matter if they act like a team or not, they're gonna win, period. Like, that's how it works. You can't, like, I hate this kind of Karate Kid like mythos where it's like if you work really hard for like 3 months you can beat someone who's like made it their entire life to be an expert in what they do. I just hate that type of story, and this is that story, and it's so annoying. And the thing is, they're not even like actually using like the tactics used when a small team goes up against a big team. They don't they don't park the bus. They actually try to actively like score and stuff, and I'm like, that's not how soccer works. That's not how these tactics work. You're just like completely ignoring the rules of everything and then trying to tell a story that's so by the numbers and by the rules, and it's so badly like constructed and made. It's so stupid and it's just so bad. And dude, this girl, her whole point is, I'm a girl, so I can't play, so you won't let me play soccer. Girl, there's a girl on the other team who's one of the this movie.
Yes. I will say I don't know too much about soccer terminology, but it's interesting to get that perspective because the girl, I forget her name at this point, but she makes a joke about like, hey, what formations do you use and all, and so you think, okay, well, so there's like some kind of strategy joke going on here, but if that's the case, if you're using that joke, only soccer fans will get that. But then at the same time, soccer fans will also notice later on that you're not using that at all in your actual gameplay. So I don't.
Basically, I was like, okay, so we're actually going to learn about the sport now. And then they just completely ignore it. Like completely. And it just really shows that they either are not fans of the sport, or if they are, I don't understand what went wrong. Like they're playing as if they're playing FIFA in that, we're just going to score all these goals and not really care about how the game actually works. And it's so
yeah, I will say that it definitely felt simplified because like for someone who like doesn't follow the sport that much, I could follow more or less what was going on in this movie. So in that sense, they succeeded, but I don't get like what your purpose is then of throwing in these is soccer in jokes and simplifying it at the expense of this being an exciting film. I
mean, I don't know. It's just that the story of like, okay, like if you just look at the elements of the story, right? Okay, like the team, like a team that represents the place where soccer is founded, England. They're not good, or whatever the reason, they're not winning. That in itself is an interesting, like, take and an interesting thing where you can explore of, like, you can really, like, grab the emotion of, like, gathering together, doing, like a great sports movie does. There's so much there of, okay, well then why can't we, like, do this? Like, here's our history, this, like, rich history that we have with this sport, and we still can't win. Or if you go on the other route and then you just go with the money just buys all these teams and then they like win, and it's so hard for the normal people, like for people who actually to train and whatever without money to actually succeed. I mean, just look at Leicester and like a couple seasons back and what they did. It's just really frustrating how they have these elements to tell a really interesting story and they just don't do anything with it. They do the most expected thing, and it is so, like, this is not the soccer movie I wanted, and I refuse to name it soccer, because, like, this is not good. Not good.
Yeah, like, I think part of them being cavemen, like, the idea of making them cavemen is that so they're too dumb to play football, like, because that seems to be their only hindrance, right? That they're dumb.
I mean, even then, it's like, that's kind of, I don't know. Like, in the beginning,
that's the only justification I can find for making cavemen play soccer.
Basically, I don't even know though. Like, I wouldn't say that they're dumb, because if you look back on their ancestors who were also cavemen, they figured out soccer pretty quickly. So, I mean, I don't think they were the ones who found it. So I don't know if it's necessarily that they're dumb. It's just, I don't know. At one point I was like, oh, is this going to be a story kind of like how they developed? Because they were talking about how in the very beginning about, oh, we only rabbit. So I was like, oh, maybe the whole point of this is, they're going to actually develop a diet and they're going to start like gaining muscle and stuff because they're changing their diet into a more complex diet. And I was like, is that what this is going to be? Like, what are they trying to do here? And I think what's interesting, I think the real problem is that this film starts it ends exactly the way it starts. Like, the characters do not progress or do not change. Like, the place that they are very much in the beginning is the same place where they're gonna end. And that just kind of shows you this, like, complete lack of tension, complete lack of stakes in this movie, because there's no change. There's nothing, no progress, no nothing. It's just, here you have this group of people that something happens and then nothing happens in the end, because whatever happened, it's like, whatever. We managed to stay the same, and there's no real point into that adventure. Because
it's a very small change, because it is basically at the beginning it's this cautious leader and this kid who has ambition, and then at the end it's the kid who has ambition is the leader, and the former leader is now just following. Whatever.
He's still leading in the same exact way. So it's kind of like, well, then what was the purpose of it? It's just a switch of characters, and like, why did the leader suddenly not want to lead anymore? It just, nothing's really explained there. It's like, why? It just, there's not really much there. There's not really much to discuss. The world that they build is like, once you actually start thinking about it, it makes no sense. The story itself, once you start thinking about it, it makes no sense. Like, I cannot get over the fact that, what's her name? Goonie, whatever the heck her name is. The whole purpose of her character is, I want to play but I'm not allowed to play because girls can't play soccer. And it's like, wait a minute, but there's a girl on the other team. So yes, they can play soccer. And one of them is considered like one of the greats. And like, I just do not understand why no one actually thought, that's contradictory to the main purpose of this character. It just makes no sense. And at first I was like, oh, maybe they're going to do something about women's soccer and how, like, that's something that we should support and it's been growing and whatnot. Nope, nothing. We're not getting anything. It's just it's just really bad. It's just really, really bad.
Can you remind me which one is the female player? Because, like, other than the leader saying, like, let's go, ladies, like, in a demeaning way when they enter.
Which was so silly.
Yeah, that was a bad joke. But, like, other than that, I didn't get any hints of females.
So she is, okay, you have like the captain, you have the winger, and then there's this one with like a ponytail and like brown hair ponytail, and she's the one who, like, you see her going to hit a ball, but then she misses it because the caveman's holding the other person. And
okay.
She's not the one with the mohawk, she's not the one with the blonde, she's not the captain, she's not the winger, she's like, I don't know, like, they said like, she, so when she was describing, and she was naming them, they used female pronouns, so I'm like, okay then, like, what? Why? Like, what is the point?
Yeah, it's almost like, I guess they're sneaking that detail by, because, like, I didn't notice at all. And other than, I guess, one word, like, there really be not much of a way to differentiate, because those characters just all look the same when they're on the field.
It's just really, I don't know, it's just really frustrating, because it's just really poor. It's just a really poor movie. And there's just nothing. There's nothing there. There's nothing there there's nothing there to talk about. And I will say again, something that really did bother me was that anyone who's supposedly like a villain is seen as like a foreigner. And I'm like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
And like, here's the thing also, and this might be me reading a little bit too into it, but at the same time, like, here I go. So, a lot of these, like, club teams have been bought by a lot of, like, Arab, like, people, like, a lot of, like, Arab, like, billionaires. So then it's like, okay, they're not going to make them sound Arab, so let's make them sound French, because we all know that French sounds a lot like Arabic, so let's do that instead. At least that's what I got out of this. And it's like, what?
And also, it's just a classic England-France rivalry. Like, English people are always disdainful of the French. Like, watching Top Gear, I'm very aware of this. So like, it's just like a very easy choice to make. Like, okay, let's just make the villain somebody from across the channel, whatever.
But what's crazy is he works for a queen who is English, and everybody else, it just makes no sense. There's no sense of location, despite the fact that in the beginning they're like near Manchester, around Manchester, and I'm like, okay, so now you're setting us up in Manchester. Like, what is the point of this? And at the same time, like, the color scheme, you have the red is for Manchester United, so the tribe, I guess, represents Manchester United. While
they literally make that joke from the commentators, like, oh, it looks like early Man United is making a comeback or something like that. But maybe that's the point of this entire movie, is just to make that joke, early Man United.
But at the same time, it's like, it makes no sense, because Manchester United is one of the richest clubs in the world. And like, if they were trying, like, I'm just trying to find, like, what is it that they're trying to say? So then the one team that is owned by a lot, like, someone with a lot of money and is very, like, greedy, and that's the whole point that they want is for this. Like, both teams are, like, rich. Both teams have this problem, have this issue, like, have no problem with just, like, having less, like, a bunch of money and known for being, like, just being very, like, what's that word? Wasteful with their money and whatnot. So it's just, I'm trying to find a purpose I'm trying to understand, like, why they're doing, like, why they're making certain choices. Like, if you're gonna do it, why set it in England? Why are you doing this if you're not gonna follow through with the details? Like, it feels very disingenuous. The world itself is, like, falling apart. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's really, really frustrating to see. And there's nothing else for me to say. Like, the only other criticism, and, like, again, the pivotal, the pinnacle example of this is that the freaking pig is acting like a dog. Why? Why is the pig acting like a dog? Like, he howls, he barks, and it's like, why? He's a pig, he's not a dog. If you wanted a dog, you should have just made him a dog. And it makes no sense.
But we're in prehistoric times. Dogs haven't been domesticated yet.
Oh, well, then they could have just used a wolf or something. They could have still had him domesticated, since apparently pigs are domesticated and, like, actually act like dogs. This movie gave me a headache. It gave me a headache, and there's nothing there to really say. But yeah, so that's all I have to say.
I do want to say that element feels very recycled, like, from the Wallace and Gromit movies, because you have Gromit being the helpful dog, always silent and helping out Wallace do his things. And it feels very recycled in that sense. Like, you have your animal sidekick who just is very competent while you are not. But I don't know, like, he's used for, I think, his scene where he's giving the massage to the French leader, like, that scene's funny enough. Also, the Frenchman makes some pig jokes, so that's okay, whatever. But yeah, I think he's used okay. But I get why does he have to be a pig exactly? Like, you don't do it, you just make him a dog just to fit the prehistoric setting. But once again, we're not really using the prehistoric setting for much in this movie to begin with. Yeah,
and I mean, I don't know. Are Park's previous films, like, are they set in, like, I think I don't know why, but in my head they're always set in, like, the like, green pastures of, like, countryside England is what I always see his things set as.
Sort of. It's Shaun the Sheep was, like, his urban movie, because, like, it begins in the farm and then the majority of the film takes place in a city. But yeah, like, Chicken Run is a very rural film. Wallace and Gromit is pretty rural. So that's just kind of his style, I guess.
Well, so I guess this is him trying to get creative and expand the worlds that he's working it with, but it failed.
Shaun the Sheep was much better at world building than this.
No, but I'm saying, like, okay, if Shaun the Sheep they went to a city, like, that's, like, in the present, I'm assuming. It's not like it's in the present. He doesn't have to work hard to build a world. It's already built for him. Well, here was him trying to build a world and it failed. So it's like, buddy, you got to put the work into it. Like, if you want us to believe in your world, you actually have to have it make sense. And it doesn't make sense at all here. It's just really silly, and history's your friend. You don't have to throw away history just so you can get creative and fantastical. Like, use that to your advantage. It's so frustrating when people don't, and it's like, why? The actual truth is actually interesting. So yeah. Do you have? I have nothing else to say about this movie. Like, there's nothing else for me. So do you have any, like, other comments?
Yeah, I think the only positive I got out of this movie were a couple of visual gags because I think that's just what he does best. Like from the very beginning, you have the asteroid striking, and then the roach is putting on his sunglasses during the asteroid strike. It's cliche, but I enjoy the visual of him putting it on before he gets blown away. Also, Mega Duck. I mean, like his first appearance is just so goofy, and like at least it. I guess I enjoy the jokes that break up the soccer story. It's like the soccer story is so monotonous. So when weird stuff happens, I'm like, oh, okay, that's funny. But maybe it's just because it's surrounded by all this blandness. Also, I think there's a joke about primordial soup, and it's just eyes coming out of the soup, like which is good imagery. I appreciate that. There was a line where they go into the cave and they find that the Frenchman shows the kid these paintings of his ancestors failing or whatever, and he says your ancestors were totally crap at football, and like the two families that were in the audience gasped because of just the usage of the word crap. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? So, but I guess I appreciate that you're willing to use language. Like, good job, I guess. And it works because of how like quiet that scene is, I guess, or just how serious. So just adding it gives it an extra oomph. So I'll give them props for that. But yeah, just like tiny moments give me laughs. But the problem is the entire product is just so forgettable. So like I enjoy these jokes because I have them written down. But like, am I going to remember them a week from now? Maybe one of them. So that's kind of the issue here. That it's great that you still have your material on the background stuff, but it's not going to help you much when what the main characters that are put in front of you are just so they're as one dimensional as the visual gags.
Yeah. I mean, again, I expected more from the humor because in the beginning, like you said, the cockroach joke was funny, but most of the time they weren't funny. They just weren't. I knew the joke before the character even opened their mouth, and sometimes the jokes went a little bit long. Like there was that one where he's like, like, look, you pig, I'm gonna go down because you're gonna attract attention. Oh. And then he just makes all the noise in the world, and it's like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And not just that, but it lasted like long. He just kept on going.
I thought the first part was like, oh, whatever. But then he fell another deck and was like, oh, okay. And then the third deck and the pig looks at his invisible watch. I was like, okay, now it's funny. Like, I guess the timing worked for me. I agree that if it's just like him tripping, it's like whatever. But the fact that it went long, I think helped the joke.
I mean, it might have helped the joke, but at the same time, it's like it still wasn't the best joke. It's like I don't know. And also, one final thing, because that's really like that's when he first sees the Goonie or Goody or whatever her name is. That's the first time he sees her and her play. The thing about soccer, the thing that's so great about it is that you can play it anywhere. That's why you have so many people from all different backgrounds, all different classes being able to play this sport. Why does she need to play it like at that pitch? Like there's no reason for her to be there if she's like a big soccer fan.
The weird, I guess part of them attempting to use the prehistoric setting is that they're trying to frame soccer as like this kind of religious experience almost. Like they're calling it like a holy game at some points. So I guess the idea is that like playing at this main pitch is like what matters, but like they don't do enough to really hammer that home other than there is a thing to be said, right? That sports can be kind of like religion and like people are very devoted to it. But once again, that's a very superficial thing in this movie. We never really get into that aside from every once in a while you have the guys looking like priests.
Totally. Yeah. It's just, I
want to say Messenger Bird was pretty good. Like,
that was good. I will give them that. But I will say, I don't know. I thought they were going to get into like match fixing or something. It's just, there are a lot of elements in here that are like a lot of like football specific elements that they could have like dived into and could have said something about, and they just don't. It's like like there are certain jokes that's like, oh, like, is this an actual joke, or am I so desperate to read something into I'm so desperate to get a message that I'm reading way too much into these things. So once you get to that point, it becomes so hard to watch because it feels like a chore. It feels like a chore to watch because then you're just like, what should I do with this? Like, there's nothing to do with this.
Yeah, like, to me, a lot of times I was just reminded, like, oh, hey, this other movie did that. Oh, hey, that other movie did that. But, like, if your movie is just making me think of better movies, then why am I here?
Basically, the point of this podcast is just to let people know that Bend It Like Beckham is still the greatest soccer movie in existence.
Yeah, also, just go watch Chicken Run, go watch Curse of the Were-Rabbit, go watch Shaun the Sheep. I hear the Pirates movie is okay. You can probably go watch that. But so there are like maybe 5 movies in the pipeline from this same group of animators that you can go watch instead of this.
Okay. All right. Well, 4 out of the 5, 5 out of the 6 movies, I guess, that they've created are good. And then, so I think that's a good track record. It's just sad that this is the one we had to podcast on.
Yeah, and especially like for people who follow, like, this is Nick Park's first film since Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and that was like 13 years ago. So imagine being away for that long, and so I assume this must be like a passion project or something for that to be one to pull him out. But just to come back on this, like, come back on such a dud. It's just disappointing.
Wait, but then why did he like retire and he just came back for this? Like, why did he wait so long?
I don't know. Because like Aardman Animations goes on, and I think like he is involved with like the company kind of like in a Jeffrey Katzenberg kind of way, but it's just like coming, or like a John Lasseter kind of way too, where he used to be a director and then he just went into executive. But something had to pull him out, and I guess it was this soccer movie. He had a great joke about soccer, and I was like, I can make a movie out of this, but let's add cavemen to bring in the kids. I don't know, but
the kids would have come just because it's anime. Like, the kids would have come anyway. They didn't have to do that. Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, any last thoughts before we go?
Nah. Just go watch Chicken Run, please. Chicken Run is a great movie. 5 stars. I'm very alone, but I need someone else to love it like I do.
Gotcha. I have nothing else to say because I think this is going to be the first podcast that goes under an hour, and there's no movie more deserving of it because there's nothing to say about this movie. You can find out all the info on this pod. Yes.
Well, I was going to say, like, Shaun the Sheep has no dialogue. Do you think we would have spoken more on that?
Probably. Probably. Absolutely. That, no doubt in my mind, we would have spoken more on Shaun the Sheep. So yeah, you can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. Join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Otaku Guy 01. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Andy, and Hugh. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Toodaloo.